Welcome to the Hemophilia Council of California's Advocacy and Policy webinar. This is our virtual Legislative Day 2021 virtual advocacy primer. So with that, I would like to introduce Randi Clites. Randi is an advocate in the bleeding disorders community. She is from Ohio and became active in the bleeding disorders community when her son Colton was born. And rather than go through all of her bio, I'm going to let Randi share her story. And I know you're going to be encouraged to hear what she has to say. And I hope it's inspirational as we get ready to embark on our legislative day, as she can give you some of her story and how she first got involved in the bleeding disorders community. So Randi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn, so much for the opportunity to speak to you all. I am super excited for the opportunity, and I am really, really passionate about advocacy, and especially for those of you who are really uncomfortable with advocacy, because that's where I started out. And so it's always great to share a little bit about my personal journey, just because I think that there's a lot of us who come into this community with no family history, and it's a little bit overwhelming. So I'm going to share a little bit about my backstory. So I am the youngest of four. I'm from a small town in rural Ohio. My parents were married for 43 years when my dad passed away at 62 years old. Um, as I said, I am the youngest of four children. I'm the big baby in the family. I have a big age group between me and my siblings. And I say that because if any of you are the youngest in your family, you also know how being the youngest sometimes makes you, it really does, really kind of draw in your personality. And for me, I am used to, my older siblings are 11, 14, and 18 years older than me. So I kind of grew up with them being so much older than me that I really didn't have much impact in the family conversations because I was so young when they were all teenagers. But then I grew up kind of like an only child, but then spoiled by my three older siblings. So I really was super spoiled. I married my high school sweetheart when we were 19. So we waited a little bit after high school, but we started dating when we were 15. And all I really wanted to do while I was growing up was be a mom. And so for me, when my husband and I got married at 19, we knew that that was too young potentially for family. Right at that time, we were both kind of not ready for kids. So I was a nanny. I had two families that I worked for over the next few years. But then finally, I became a mom. So my son Colton was born when I was 27 years old. This is my guy here. And so we were really excited whenever I got pregnant. And then when he was born, we knew that there was something a little bit off with his bleeding patterns. It took us 2 weeks to get a diagnosis of severe hemophilia A. And we went home with a book by Lori Kelly about hemophilia. And for the next year, we really just kind of tried to find our way through the hemophilia community. And so I pretty much just stayed home, read what I could. It was 2002, so read what I could on the internet, read that book like my Bible. And then about a year and Colton started bleeding pretty regularly at that point. And so we started the life of a severe hemophiliac, going to the hospital quite frequently, trying to learn how to access the clotting factor from home. My husband's an electrician for a small business, so just managing how to find access to clotting factor with a small employer was quite difficult in the early 2000s. The Affordable Care Act hadn't come yet, so we had a lifetime cap and we had annual caps, so we were trying to make sure that we stayed under that. And then unfortunately, when he was 15 months old, he started getting really sick and we didn't know what was going on. And it took about a month to get a diagnosis of leukemia. And so then he started 3.5 years of chemotherapy. And fortunately, he did really well throughout his treatment for leukemia, but that really made me step up my game in advocating for children with special healthcare needs. And so I did so through a couple different ways. I got really involved at the children's hospital that Colton was seen at. So I I was a parent mentor, and then I started getting really involved in the Parent Advisory Council. And then through the Parent Advisory Council, I got connected to our children's program. I think you guys call it CCS in California, but in Ohio, it's called the Children's Medical Handicaps Program through our Department of Health. And so I started serving on that council, just making sure that middle income families could access the care that they needed. Through no fault of their own. A lot of times there's just really high medical costs, and I know all of you know where that comes from. So just trying to make sure that we had access to what we needed to have access to became kind of my focus, because I knew Children's Hospital was taking care of his leukemia and his hemophilia the best that they could. I learned how to infuse at home, and so we were doing infusions Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at home. He was going to the hospital for his chemo treatments at least twice, sometimes 3 times a week. So those first few years were really difficult. We got safety net that we had. And so we got through those years, and then I really found my way in advocacy. So I started volunteering with our treatment center. They had an advisory council. And then through that advisory council, we formed an Ohio coalition. So it's called the Ohio Bleeding Disorders Council. And when that first formed, some parents sat on that with patients, and then all of our treatment center, we have 8 hemophilia treatment centers in the state of Ohio. So all of them had a seat on the council, and then all of 5 of our foundations had a seat on that table. And so I served as the parent lead for that, and started really learning how to advocate for our family and families like ours. And so I organized families to go to the state capitol and share their story through our state advocacy day. And that's really where I found most of my passion was, how we could share our stories to make a difference. And so I kind of had something I wanted to share a little bit with you all, just to show you. I get really nervous when I speak, but I really found that if I do so with a coordinated effort, that I do much better. And so I started putting these little packets together. So it's just a little photo book, and whatever the advocacy ask was, I know you guys are preparing for it, and maybe something that they're going to do too, but I would just talk a little bit about our family. So just a little bit about who I was, so I wouldn't forget to introduce myself. And then just some pictures of our family, just so the person that you are talking to can relate. And then always, start off with like a 101. So just whatever part of the hemophilia bleeding disorder story that you're comfortable with, just sharing a little bit of that story. And then going into your asks. So I know that you guys have a couple asks today. So just whichever one you're most comfortable with, just sharing a little bit of detail about that. So this was, talking about our out-of-pocket cost. And then just remember to put your story into the story of the community story. And so for us, in Ohio, we have a large population like California does. And so Colton was, I forget what year this was that I last put it together, but you can see, like, I found the stats on how many severe hemophiliacs there were. So I could point to exactly where Colton is in the stats, that there's 270 severe hemophiliacs in the state of Ohio, and Colton is one of them. And so just being able to make sure that you share your story really clearly. And then I always finish up with a thank you. So sending them back a thank you card, so it reminds me to thank them and send it out. So this was how I kind of found my place in the community. Was I started sharing stuff like this with other families. So just doing those kinds of things to make sure that you're being clear and concise in your story. And so then that way, that is a good way to be really involved. So I kind of shared too, I got involved with our Children with Medical Handicaps, which is our Title V, or the Children Maternal Child Health Block Grant dollars go to our Title V program. But then also those dollars are also spent by the counties. And so if you're not very close to the Capitol or not engaged with the state program, your county health district or health department sometimes has an advisory council that you can also be a part of. So take some time to look into that. I also served with that organization locally, and it's 10 minutes from my house. And so I would go and I'd share with other special needs families. And then your chapter usually has some kind of advocacy, or the treatment center has some kind of advocacy efforts that you can get involved in, or advisory councils. I also served in those capacities too. So just getting to a point where you can share your family stories would be really great. One of the things that I really found myself doing that I didn't realize was kind of growing my advocacy skills was just building relationships locally. So because we are in a space where we're highly impacted by issues that happen around healthcare, I was going to local organizations and just kind of listening and building relationships with them. So like your county commissioners, your state, or your local elected officials. If they have town hall or office hours, just attend, because you just never know, building those relationships with people before maybe they go off and run for state representative or state senator, or even Congress or US Senate. If you can get on the ground with them when they're building up to their political futures, it's really important and really impactful. We did not have a lot of money when we were young, especially. And so, going to these town halls and just being somebody there to be supportive and just sharing our story about hemophilia and bleeding disorders was always super important. And so we really found that doing that locally kind of built a relationship with our local officials in a way that whenever my state representative was getting ready to term out in Ohio, we have 8-year terms. And I went to her to see if she knew who was going to potentially run for state representative the next time around. She actually was surprised because she thought that I was coming to her to ask to run for state representative, and I was not. I still get really nervous speaking in front of people. I've never thought I would run for office, never had an intention to be political at all. I really love working on policy work, but that was not really kind of what I was thinking. And so she had asked me if I was kind of thinking about it in 2016. I was not, and then the whole election cycle changed and President Trump won that election. And I knew healthcare was going to be a huge issue that was going to be something that we all talked about, especially around the Affordable Care Act and how the changes were going to potentially come with it going to the Supreme Court. And so I decided, what the heck, why not? If President Trump can win, why can't Randi Clites win a little county like mine? And so I did. I decided to run for office. And when I ran for office, I really did so mostly how high cost medical needs impact middle income families every day. And so I did so, and I was in a 3-way race, and I actually ended up winning, and I was not expecting that. And so then after winning the primary, I was kind of putting on the hat to really run to win. And I did so, and I got to serve for 2 years at the State House, being a mom of a child with hemophilia and leukemia. It really gave a great perspective to the legislature, to the health committee, that I was there representing our community. And so super exciting to be able to serve. And I don't know that I can talk any of you into it, but I would love to ask if any of you are interested in running for office and you would like to talk to somebody, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about it. I think we need more families that are impacted by everyday decisions that are made at the state houses around the country to run for office. So I'd be happy to ask for any questions at all. If anybody has any, you're welcome to throw them in the chat. I would be happy to answer any questions at any time.
Thanks, Randi. So you can also, I believe, raise your hand and I can actually allow you to talk if you have a question, or you can put your question in the chat box. So I will ask a question quickly, and while we wait and see if there's any others that pop up, but do you have any sort of quick, you gave us definitely some great pointers in terms of, like, your little, your index cards that you put in your photo album with your talking points. And in a moment, we're going to go through and go over the issues with folks for board, Tuesday, or for Wednesday, I should say. But do you have any other sort of, summary pointers as they prepare for their meetings that they should keep in mind for meeting with legislators? And then I'll go ahead and ask this one as well that just came into the chat, which says, does Colton participate in your advocacy endeavors?
So both great questions. And I'll start with the question that was in the chat first, because it's the easiest one. So Colton does not participate in advocacy very often. I have had him attend Washington Days and our state advocacy days. He does know some of his elected officials, but he has not been real engaged on his own. It's mostly just when he's with me, he will go and share his story if it's very pointed. And that's the kind of answer your question, Lynn. I think the best thing that you can do is really have that elevator speech ready to go based off of, if the coalition gives you, or the council gives you 3 talking points, like 3 things that they're really looking to do. Find the one that you are most passionate about and have your 2-minute elevator speech ready to go at all times about that, because you just never know. Policy and political stuff is all local. You just never know when you might potentially go to the grocery store and see an elected official. And those are usually the times when you can get the most done, because when they're in their offices or when you're on a call with multiple people, sometimes it's harder to get your issue addressed. But when you can see them out organically, I think those are when you have the best opportunities to kind of get anything done and to get your awareness raised. So
that's great. Somebody asked if you could show the package again. So maybe if you could hold up your little, so it's basically like a small photo album, like a 3x5 or 4x6 size, right?
It's a 4x6, and I can literally get them at Target or Walmart, or the Walgreens sometimes has them. And then I just use index cards. So this one is just a plain index card. One side is lined, and then the other side is just plain. When Colton was little, I would have him kind of color a little picture on there of our family if I didn't want to share one of our actual families. But like I said, play to your thing. Like, I'm known for forgetting to introduce myself because I just get so nervous whenever I'm speaking in front of people. So that's usually what I usually start off with, is just our introduction. And anytime you're doing these kinds of things, you want to find the way to kind of connect with the person that you're speaking to. So if you look up your elected official before you go and find out that they have a science background, then you really want to get into the science part of, or, the genetics of hemophilia. If you find out they have a health background, then you want to address like how the clotting cascade works. So those are kind of the things that I had done in the past. And then, we all use our EOBs, and this is really old information. It's from 2016. But just anything that to the story that you're trying to tell based off of the ask that you're going into the meeting for. So for me, this one, I was really trying to show the cost of clotting factor. So I used a portion of my insurance. So I went to my insurance benefits and printed out a little thing on that. And then this was something that our coalition, our council in Ohio has these stats on our website. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure you guys probably have it at the treatment center level or at the council level too. So that's just what I put together. And then I always took a note card in with me to ask questions. And I always feel like if you can leave that meeting with a question, so you can follow up with them, that's a win in advocacy, because you want to be able to follow up with a lawmaker to build that relationship. So, and that's as simple as it is, because usually when you are speaking to your lawmakers, you have about 10 minutes or so. So just making sure that you stick to your points is why I like putting these together.
Awesome. So great. Thank you, Randy, for all of that. So we're going to move on to have time to cover our issues here, but we appreciate so much you joining us today to share those tips. And I know that that was super helpful, and we're going to tie into some of those tips as we talk about our issues here. So appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. Good luck, everyone.
I want to thank our sponsors of Future Leaders and Legislative Day, Takeda BioMarin, HF Healthcare, Sanofi Genzyme, the National Hemophilia Foundation, Every Life Foundation, and Solio Health, as well as our Public Policy and Advocacy webinar series sponsors, Takeda BioMarin, HF Healthcare, and Sanofi Genzyme. They've all helped to make this possible today. So thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.